I'm sure you can understand why our beloved parent company, Warner Brothers, has decided to make a sequel to the trilogy. They informed me they're going to do it with or without us. I'm Eddie Webb.
And I'm back again for this thing.
Today, we're going to talk about The Matrix Resurrections. Hello and welcome to another episode of Genres where we talk about the first movie, The Matrix. Again, kind of, sort of.
Remixed.
Right. So I'm going to be honest here. I am the person who want to talk about this movie primarily. And I have lots of thoughts about this movie, and I'm excited to talk about it. I want to qualify none of that in any way, shape, or form should indicate that I think the movie is good. But it is interesting.
I was not super jazzed in the movie. My opinion, I don't think necessarily has changed, but I'm always interested to hear what Eddie thinks of something when it really interests him.
Right. So a lot of talking about this movie, you need to talk about how the movie came about, which is why I specifically chose the quote I did, which is hilariously actually in the movie. But so basically, as we previously in the previous episode of Matrix, we talked about how even with the third movie being critically panned, it still made a lot of money. And Warner Brothers had been wanting to try to make even more Matrix movies because Matrix movies kept making a lot of money. This led to, as far as we can tell, about 15 years, 10 to 15 years of fighting with the Wachowskis over this because for a long time they didn't want to do them. And then eventually Warner Brothers did say that they had actually hired someone to write a new screenplay after the Wachowskis had turned down all of the offers. And everything I understand was that they were offered a ludicrous amount of money to do the Matrix movies, to do another Matrix sequel.
I heard a young Michael B. Jordan might have been in one of those other Matrix movies.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Either as a young Morpheus or like a kid of Morpheus or something.
Yeah, I know. I think one point one of those options was a prequel was being kicked around. Yeah,
I would have liked to have seen that movie, Eddie.
that would have been fun, I think. But so eventually, in 2019, it was announced that there was going to be another Matrix movie. Only Lana Wachowski came back. Lily did not. This leads to some interesting conversation because Lily has gone on record being very open, saying that Warner Brothers more or less strong-armed them into doing something. Basically, like the line in the movie says, they were going to do something with the Matrix. They wanted to have the Wachowskis on board, but they were happy to go ahead without them. Their reasons for why they did or didn't do the movie, however, in no way, shape, or form mention actually talking about Warner Brothers, which has more. I have no basis for this, but does have the whiff of NDA about it, right? Like the reason why they can't talk about Warner Brothers is because they legally couldn't talk about it. So instead, Lana and Lily have come up with their own respective reasons as to why they did or didn't get involved. Lana said that she did it primarily because she had lost both of her parents who died 5 weeks apart, as well as a close friends within a very short period of time after that. And she wanted to do something that was comforting in the face of all of this loss. And so going back to Neo and Trinity was her way of kind of consoling herself and giving herself something that she felt she had control over, and that she some kind of normalcy and comfort in life that there's something she could bring back for all these things that she'd lost. Lily said that she absolutely did not want to do the movie for exactly the same reasons, which is that I've gone through my transition. I've lost both my parents. My life's been upheaval. Why would I want to go back to something I've already done? So all of that, I feel like, has to shade how we approach this movie on some level, because we certainly do our usual take a step back and look at the as a piece of art. Spoiler: it's not going to be a very long conversation if we do that, because there's not a whole lot to say, frankly. But it's much more interesting as to how this movie came about and what this movie did with that circumstance. Because on top of it all, this was one of the movies that was halted by COVID-19. They started shooting in February 2020, so like they just got shooting when they had to stop again.
I thought
Lana
it
wanted
happened
to.
later in production than that, actually.
No, they had just started shooting. They'd done some early shooting in late 2019 in terms of like background stuff and second unit stuff, but like getting like uh, Moss and Reeves together and shooting with them, that started like early February 2020, and then lockdowns happened like a week after they started shooting ish. Um, and then in the middle of that, uh, Lana debated just abandoning it because of all the COVID stuff and all the stress and her conflicted feelings. And it was again Moss and Reeves that convinced her to finish it. So uh, there's all of that. This was also the last movie to be part of that weird, we're going to release both in theaters and HBO Max schedule that happened for about a year and a half around COVID, if you remember that.
Oh, I love that. That's how I saw the Doom, because I wasn't going to a theater.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I saw
Christopher
actually quite
Nolan
a few
may hate
movies.
me, I think. Is it Nolan? Nolan didn't make that. Sorry. He did.
Yeah.
No, he
But
didn't.
there are quite a few movies released in 2020, 2021 that I probably wouldn't, even if COVID hadn't been happening, I probably wouldn't have gone to the theater to see, but I did see because of that simultaneous release. This was the last one that HBO Max did on that schedule, right? So, like, so much about how this movie came to be, why it exists, when it came out, is deeply weird and atypical. Um, and yet,
Sorry. As to correct myself, Villeneuve was Dune, which I remember, but I remember Christopher Nolan wanting people to go to the theaters to see movies. I'd mixed up my
right,
thoughts.
right,
I'm
no, that
clarifying that before our listeners come out and call me out how they have in the past.
actually, weirdly, I had mentally decoupled those in my brain and just forgot to say anything. So I was like, yeah, I know what you mean. Because you're right, Nolan
And
was like,
and
you can go.
and I also specifically interrupted because you mentioned that both Reeves and Moss, or as I will call them, Keanu and Carrie Ann, because we're friends,
Right, because you're good friends with them, right? Yeah.
convinced her to go ahead and make the movie. Where is Fishburne, Eddie? He wasn't
We'll get to
working.
that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Um, uh, so like this is deeply weird for like again, the environment it came out in was weird. Um, and so this is the first Matrix movie to lose money, about 30 million worth. It only made about 160 versus the budget of 190 million. And Warner Brothers has said that because of the environments, because of COVID, that's part of the reason why they felt like the movie didn't make as much money. Put that to one side. Now, the movie itself, right, is doing two things simultaneously, which are again deeply weird. One is it is amazingly obvious to anybody watching this movie that everyone involved is kind of questioning why the movie exists. To the point where people, the script itself, things happening in the movie, literally question the movie, not even in a subtextual way, right? It's really deeply obvious, like, why is this thing even happening? And so, metatextually, because it's the Matrix, it's like, I was like, well, let's roll into that. Let's play with that. Let's dig into that. And we'll talk more about how that works out in a minute. The other thing that's weird is that we had talked back in the first three movies about how the second and third movie came out in kind of, that big 2003 year blitz, and how that was a good archetype for how something like the MCU maybe should work, which is that you didn't need to know all the pieces, but each piece you got in more or less gave you context for. But you could watch those two movies not knowing anything else existed and be fine, right? And then this movie comes along and fucks that up. Because the reason why Lawrence Fishburne is not in this movie is because the MMO that no longer exists killed Morpheus off. And Lana made a promise 15 years ago that she would respect all the canon of the MMO, and so that's why Morpheus is not in this movie.
I don't remember enough about the game, but I do vaguely remember that there are things I think that happen in the game that aren't necessarily canon in the movie. So I'm gonna let it go because I don't remember those specific points. But
Okay.
I say malarkey.
So here's what I know. Lawrence Fishburne, when interviewed, said, "I don't know why I'm in the movie. You have to ask Lana about it because I'm happy to do it, but I never got a call." When Lana was then confronted with that information, that is what she said. She's like, the Matrix Online is canon to the Matrix, and so therefore, and that character is no longer available as per the events of the Matrix Online. Same with Agent Smith, actually. And so that is why we have not used those characters.
Then I ask you, why is it that you specifically said Agent Smith? Now I have a question. Why is it they went to Hugo Weaving and said, "Please, Hugo, come be in our movie"? And Hugo said, "No."
What I was going to say is that Warner Brothers has put out a statement saying that the reason why both of those actors went in the movie was because they wanted to offer a fresh take on those existing characters. Right? So the answer is, frankly, we don't know.
But I'm stressing that Lana went to Hugo and said, "Hey, be in our movie, Agent Smith." And Hugo said, "I can't. I got other shit to do." But they did not go to Lawrence Fishburne and said, "Hey, be in our movie."
Right, I know. So, like,
I smell bullshit.
Well, if we take Lana's statement at face value, right, this is exactly the kind of thing that I bitch about when people talk about fidelity to canon. Which is that when people say, well, you have to respect the canon and things that break canon are a problem, it's like going, this is absolutely a case where you should say, fuck the Matrix Online and use Lawrence Fishburne because why in the fuck is he not in this movie? That's a problem. If that is a piece of information that Lana was told to regurgitate, then why did Warner Brothers undercut that message that Lana put out?
Because that's what corporations do. They don't really care about artists. They'll tell you one thing and they'll say something else that suits them at that time.
Sure, right. Like, well, strategically, it makes no sense. My only argument at that point probably was, considering what's happening during 2020, it was probably a fair case of the left-handed Warner Brothers didn't know what the right-handed Warner Brothers was doing, frankly.
We could go look at Henry Cavill and Superman and what DC said and what DC told him to say, and then they said something else later. It is
right.
The company doesn't give a fuck about you at the end of the day. So
no, that's entirely fair.
Whatever they need at that moment is what they're going to go with. And that could have been the situation with Lana. I'm just going to come back. They did not ask Lawrence Fishburne to come back, but they asked Hugo Weaving to come back. So for me, instantly, I also had some before entering the movie. And then to cast someone in a role that sort of mocks what Lawrence Fishburne was doing, as much as I love Yaya, and he's amazing. No.
And there's a whole third spoke of this, is that a lot of the people who not only filled those roles, but other roles in this movie all come from Sense8, which is the Wachowskis' Netflix project that happened between the third Matrix movie and this movie. Yeah. Right?
So they got Martha Jones.
Right. Yes, I saw that. I was just like, oh, hey, that's an actor I know. So like, this movie is a mess. It's just an extremely expensive mess that didn't need to exist. And yet inside of the movie, and some elements of the movie are interesting. Right? So like, I didn't want this movie to exist. After I watched the movie, I was like, why did that exist? But there's bits of the movie that stuck in my head since I watched it in 2021. And I think that's worth talking about. So like, that's why I said up top, like, usually I don't put my cards on the table this heavily. We talk about these things, but like, this is not a good movie. But there's some really interesting stuff to talk about in this movie.
Eddie, you know what I'm getting right now?
What?
I'm getting my own flashback of sitting here seeing us like playing on a video recorder, much like in this movie, of us talking about Twin Peaks: The Return and me doing exactly what you did right now.
Yes.
I'm
Exactly
watching
it.
that video.
Yes, because I remember watching Twin Peaks Return, going, it's like, I get what you're saying, but also, why do we watch this? And I knew this was my turn for that exact reaction. It's like, I know what I'm buckling in for this conversation, right? And I'm going to make some interesting assertions during the course of this. But I do want to. A lot of those are going to stick for like various parts of the movie, because this is really two movies jammed together in a lot of ways.
Wasn't this supposed to kick off a series of movies? I think another trilogy, or at least a duology, or a binary, if you will.
As I understand it, that was what Warner Brothers wanted. I believe Lana negotiated down to a single movie with the idea that there would be potentially movies after this that feature the new cast. Right? It's kind of the idea this would be a handing of the torch off to a new cast, which is, I suspect, some of the reason why the Sense8 kids are in this, because I think it was Lana kind of going, hey, the Netflix thing fell apart. I want to get you guys some more work, right?
And I want to state now, just I know that you don't, and you're brilliant. I'm pretty sure our listeners don't, but Eddie does not mean Sense8 kids in a derogatory form of fashion.
No. No,
Just
sorry,
wanna
that
highlight
was not my intention. No, I meant as in younger actors compared to the two leads of this movie.
Who look phenomenal, by the way. I want to look that
absolutely.
good right now, and I'm younger than that.
Absolutely. And arguably that may happen because April 2024.
I can look that good, Eddie? How?
No, I meant the continuation of the
so I can't look that good.
No,
is that what you're telling me?
You're fucked. I'm sorry, my friend. I'm sorry. I apologize. That wasn't clear. You were going to age badly. Just we both are. But no. 2024. Warner Bros. Announced that they are doing a new installment of the franchise. Lana is the executive producer. Drew Goddard is writing and directing. Which again is like, that's what Warner Brothers wanted initially. Well, not that person necessarily, but they wanted someone without the Wachowskis necessarily involved. They want something to move forward. And so now Lana's kind of sort of involved. So we're going to get more Matrix movies. Figure that out.
I've got a lot of thoughts, but I'm trying to like see which ones I want to put up front versus what we want to talk about at the end. Okay, you said this movie bombed. Eddie, how much was the budget for this thing?
$190 million.
How much did it make?
$160 million.
All right, I know where I want to go. All right.
Okay.
I use that as a distraction. You said they were originally trying to use this movie to have like the original cast pass it off to the new cast. Kind of how Star Wars was going to try to do the same thing.
Yes, very much in vibe at the time. Yes.
And we see how both of those ideas worked out.
Badly. Correct.
Okay. No, I'm not going to say that here. I'll save that for later. I really want to know why they did not ask Lawrence Fishburne. That's bothering me on an intrinsic level every time I watch this film. And this is the second time I've seen it.
Sure.
When I saw it on HBO when it came out, and I was like, that was a film I watched. I will never watch that movie again.
Right. So I don't think I've said it on the podcast, but I've said it in other spaces. I have always felt that in a lot of ways, the John Wick movie is a spiritual successor to The Matrix in a way that the actual Matrix movies have never accomplished. And one of those is that Lawrence Fishburne is very prominent in those movies. I think it's part of it. The John Wick movies have other different problems, and also hilariously the exact same problems that the Matrix movies had, which is a single movie got expanded to a franchise and it falls apart pretty quickly after that happens. But regardless, they seem to get what a lot of people wanted out of a Matrix sequel in ways that the actual Matrix sequels have never accomplished. And again, one of those is Lawrence Fishburne, right? So there are problems with this movie, and they stem back from the inception stage, but then there are additional problems along the way that are completely self-created. There's a narrative that comes out when people like this movie of like, well, the Wachowskis had to do this because or Lana had to do this because otherwise they were going to go without her, and so she was dealt a bad hand, did the best hand, and I get a large chunk of that, but as you point out, there are enough inconsistencies here that make it how much of that is true up in the air, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and to be honest, um, they said 2024, Drew Goddard's going to write and direct, Lana's going to executive producer, but in 2024, how much is Warner Brothers going to go out on a limb for a trans creator in 2024? Right. So,
Yeah.
how much of this is Lana made mistakes because she took a bad hand? How much of this is Lana had creative decisions that didn't land well? And how much of this is Warner Brothers fucked a trans creative? We don't know, but I think there are certain percentages of all three of those in this equation.
Yeah. And part of, and I'm sorry for her losses and everything else that were part of the impetus for her coming back to this. And it's the same thing, I think, that was similar with the second Black Panther movie. It was the loss of Chadwick Boseman that shaped that movie itself, too.
Yes,
And that movie
absolutely.
wasn't well received either because of that
Mhm.
shaping and loss and everything else that was driving production of the film. And I'm just noting, seeing similarities in the execution of the films, not how they came about, but like the executions and the and the reactions to those. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, again, that's why I think this movie is interesting to talk about because, um, it is coming from a lot of very specific forces that all kind of collide in this movie in very bad ways. Because 'cause you're right, like, um, how a movie moves on from a key significant emotional loss is one thing. How does a franchise try to reinvent itself to be perpetual is something that's tried, like I said, with Star Wars, even Ghostbusters is also happening around this time period too. How much COVID shaped how media is made is very relevant to how this movie comes about. Um, because this is a franchise that's known for lots of close combat, and that's
Not
extremely
here.
difficult to do, right? And we'll get into one very noteworthy way that changed, which I believe is to the movie's detriment. Um, so like there's so much like we talked about in 1999, The Matrix was a weird lightning in a bottle moment of forces that no one could possibly predict to make this amazing movie. In 2021, the exact same thing happened, but instead of making a fantastic movie, it made a terrible movie. So it's weird because, like, in a lot of ways, this movie is both intentionally and unintentionally paralleling the very first movie. And so, like, it's fascinating, but the results, again, are not always good.
The other big thing to note is that viewers changed over over that large chunk of time, and the way they communicate and spread information to each other also changed. Like, I'm fairly certain if even the original Matrix dropped today, updated today, it was as awesome as it is then, now it would have received mixed reviews and been attacked on all sides.
Yeah, because, like, you can almost imagine, right, like, as soon as that movie drops, all of the YouTube bait videos
Yep.
about around the messages of the movie, and from both directions, like how problematic the Matrix is and how woke the Matrix is, and you could just see like the outraged guy in truck having an argument about the Matrix.
And
Whereas
the
in
algorithm would have
1999,
killed it.
right? But in 1999, you would have had the actual conversations with your mates about that movie, and that would it's a and so people remembered those conversations and thought those conversations were amazing when you're 21 years old,
Yeah.
and so therefore the movie's amazing. And again, the movie actually is genuinely amazing, but you can't redo that for a lot of reasons. Specifically, that environment of people engaging with the movie doesn't exist anymore.
So I wanted to bring that up now at the top of the show before we get really into the rest of the movie itself. And I'm not saying this is a good movie. Eddie has said this is something. The other point I want to bring up is this movie should have multiple warnings attached to it. People could say that's my wokeness, but as suicide plays such a key factor in this movie, it is something that should
Mhm.
be stated up front and
That's
before
fair.
you even get to the film. There should be like warnings about that because
That's
it's
fair.
treated like nothing. It's weaponized, in fact, even in this film.
That's fair. Yeah. Um, that's a good point. Yeah. So I mean, we have to talk about a significant character attempting suicide at one time. So this could be a problem. Honestly, you could probably skip this episode and be fine, frankly, because, but,
It's
um,
it's not even like one character, it's multiple people and then an army of people.
well, right. Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yes. The whole NBC, that's also a fair point. Um, yeah. So there's, again, uh, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I can talk about it here too. One of the things that's odd about the movie is that the way Lana talks about the movie, it's like this sense of loss and grief, but frankly, there's so much anger in the movie from the way you watch it. When you see this kind of stuff, and there's so much about the movie, it's like this feels like when I first watched it, I was like, the Wachowskis are mad about something. And the whole movie feels like someone gave the 190 million dollars to be mad about something.
Well, there's
Um,
stages of grief.
right, right, and then that may be part of it. Now that you say that, that's a good point. Maybe they're going through that stage of grief. But this is an angry movie, and one of those is very clearly anger at suicide. So again, we have no information about how their parents passed or how their close friend passed, but given what's happening in this movie, I think you can probably make a couple of guesses.
And my last point, then we could probably really get into this, is uh, institutions on the whole. You know what? The movie institution on the whole is built to create media and generate money and affluence for people in that industry, primarily going up to the top. We all understand that.
Mm,
And for people that want to get into the industry, for creatives to like make this thing they've always wanted to make, is something a lot of us aspire to. But the thing
mm,
is, once you get into the industry, you accept that you're part of it and you either go along with it to make money to keep trying to go and raise in rank, or you try to like fight against whatever the industry is doing and
mm.
likely destroy yourself and any potential career you could have. So I'm hearing they're really trying to force Lana to do this thing. What I don't understand is if you didn't want to do it, why would you make something that is potentially going to destroy what you want to do, the past legacy that you've built, instead of helping shapes, instead of taking a secondary role to it, to letting someone else come in that you sort of guide along that may have led to something else.
That's interesting. I'll get more into this, I guess, in the first half of the movie, but like I did feel some of it is Lana kind of interrogating her 1999 self and kind of. I didn't see it as necessarily trying to damage the franchise so much as going, "Hey, I made this movie, you know, almost 25 years ago, and I feel I'm a different person now." In Lana's case, literally, and it's like I have different thoughts, different feelings, and maybe I need to interrogate some of the things I put forward in that first movie. Um, but again, like to your point, Warner Brothers let a weird amount of this shit slide. And so like there is again this weird case of like how much of this is Warner Brothers going, we don't care as long as the Wachowski's name is on it, and how much of this is Lana subconsciously, consciously wanting to hurt this thing, and how much of it was just she was just going through a lot in her life, you know?
How much of it could be something similar to what they did with Batgirl? They let it happen to let it essentially shelve Batgirl, but they still let the whole production happen, and they could write it off, and then they could do whatever they wanted with it. Are they trying to like potentially damage let the IP itself be damaged, so then they could put in someone else to do what they wanted to do in the first place?
That's
Kind
fair.
of how
I mean,
studios like put out an origin movie for superhero every 8 years, so they can keep that IP rights.
right? And I could certainly see a cynical take of let's let the Wachowski do it. Oh, look, that didn't make money, so now you understand why we're going to go ahead without you because you're no longer a viability. Which again, another way to kind of screw over a trans creator. You didn't do as much because again, like 160 million is still a shit ton of money
Yeah.
on an objective perspective, especially in an environment where people were not going to theaters at all.
And another big thing, though, what I've generally noticed in movies is that if a creator comes back some decades later to like reinvestigate what they've done and attempt to then like put out that new version of whatever it is, it generally doesn't go over well. If you go back and look at like E.T., when he went back and he removed all the guns, replaced with walkie-talkies, people
Right.
like that.
Mhm.
If you go back and look at Lucas and his many
Star Wars
iterations of
movies.
Star Wars and how that worked
Yep.
out for him, it is a consecutive thing where people have nostalgia for something, and that's how it should stay
Right.
for them.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not targeting Lana at all. I'm trying to figure out where the disconnect happens between going back and re-examining work that you've done that has been influential for a generation of people or more versus the
Right.
new you that wants to change wherever that is to reflect your current values and views.
Right. And going back to Twin Peaks, actually, Twin Peaks Return, I felt like, even though there was a lot of what the fuck is this, I really felt like that was the only real answer, which is to do something that's so disconnected from it that shows like this is where I am now as a creative. I have only the most tangential connections to the previous thing. I'm doing something very different now because I'm just not that person anymore.
Yeah.
And you see bits of that in this movie, right? Again, I do want to talk about like the actual parts of the movie because like it's I feel like I dig into some of this more when we go into the actual pieces of it, but I think there's some interesting bits there that kind of point in both directions.
All right, if you want to get to the movie, we can do the thing.
I know you're trying to avoid talking about this movie. I get it.
Well, no, I wanted to think about more of the past production and possible the reasons why the movie existed before we got into the movie proper.
Right.
Because
okay,
the movie's kind of a retread.
It is. Intriguing you should bring it up. So let's start with a young woman named Bugs learns that the Matrix is running old code in a loop, reenacting the moment which Trinity first found Neo within the Matrix. Bugs discovers Anderson's apartment along with a program embodying Morpheus and helps to free him from simulation. That's not a lot happens, but that's the first like 10-ish minutes of the movie. And it is explicitly recreating the very first scene of the very first movie, and with characters acknowledging that is what's happening. And when I watched it, I very much felt like it was commentary on this exact treadmill of endlessly remaking things, right? Because one of the things that happens in that very first chunk where we see not Trinity again is taking a scene that was shot not extremely cheaply, but relatively cheaply in 1999, and then remade with way more money and better technology now to try to recreate the same thing. And it even to the point where obviously different actors playing Trinity in that bit of loop, but the whole thing looks off and wrong in a very intentional way, I think. And that sets a tone for the whole movie, right? Which is like, this is going to be a retread. We're fully aware that this is going to be a retread, and we are mining nostalgia. And so it's like, when I first watched it, I was like, okay, this is actually kind of interesting. How hard are you going to lead into this criticism? Because one of the things that the first movie did really well was offered up some interesting criticisms that you could think about.
Interesting. Because even the first time I watched it, the other time, this started me on already not being into the movie. It could be because we all know very much that Chris hates a flashback. Like, blah, tell your fucking story.
Right.
And this retread is essentially multiple flashbacks with someone with a questionable memory, is all it is. And that is instantly what I got. Now, I love seeing Yaya in anything. Like, hands
Yeah.
down, Yaya should be in everything. And he has a gravitas, it works.
Mm-hmm.
And Jessica Henwick is an actress that I think should be in a lot more things and should be more successful than she is.
The recipe Bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fucking love Bugs.
In everything. Like, she was
Yeah.
robbed as Culling Wing. She was in like Knives Out 2 as the assistant. She was in Game of Thrones, but like she should have her own starring role. And this movie could have been it, but it's not.
Right. Because as much as I've been talking about this interesting criticism on that, right after the code breaks down and they one of the agents gets captured and they free him. Bugs replays the red pill blue pill scene for the character we will soon know as Morpheus. So it's supposed to be kind of an inversion of the Morpheus did in the original movie. Now it's being done to Morpheus in this movie. Blah blah blah.
Agent
And
Morpheus.
So right. And there's this interesting bit where Bugs is kind of critiquing the whole red pill blue pill scene. It's very fast, but she's like, it's not really a choice and it's a reductive viewpoint. And so like when I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, okay, so now you're critiquing your own work. It's here's your mindless retread, but let's point out all the problems that the original movie had, right? But already, even the first time I was watching, even though I was like, this could be really interesting, I'm like, there was a big, huge gaping hole at that point, which is that if you're a trans creator making The Matrix in 2021 and you're critiquing the red pill, blue pill scene, there is zero reference to how red pill's been co-opted by the alt-right.
Yeah.
And I had a suspicion at that point in time. I was like, how much studio interference has been involved in this script?
But the thing is, even as Bugs is sitting there saying there really isn't a choice, essentially, the Merovingian told us 20 years ago that choice was an illusion, and that's been reinforced. So even that is a retread of something that's already happened.
And that's a fair point. I hadn't thought about that until just now, because you're right. And since I've watched these now back to back, supposed to before, I didn't watch any of the Matrix movie before I watched this movie again. And so I was going by my memory of the movie from roughly 10 years ago. And I didn't remember 2 and 3. So I'd forgotten the Merovingian entirely. So like, you're right. It's presented as if it's a fresh new take, but as you say, it's just remixing the original 3 movies. And we'll see this in a minute here, but like the event, they'll literally start slicing clips from all 3 movies into the narrative at a point. So when I didn't get that the first time watching it, this time around, I started to kind of feel like, yeah, remix is in the air. The other thing that's interesting about this chunk of the movie is we talked about this in 2 and 3, how there was this very obvious pressure to keep reinventing amazing visuals, right? It's like we have to do this amazing fight scene on a highway. We have to do this amazing fight scene with a million Smiths, so on and so forth. And I think we both remarked that there was kind of diminishing returns between 2 and 3 about how that landed, because it started to feel a lot like, this is the part where we do a cool camera trick, right? And in this chunk, we have, again, interesting, not necessarily good, moment where they start fighting through a whole bunch of different planes, like in terms of axis. It's an evolution of the lobby gunfight in 3, where people are on the ceiling and on the floor and then standing on walls. They evolved to actually literally going through different angles of camera angles, like people are intersecting in different ways and whatnot. And that's a natural evolution of the Matrix movies, but also was literally a thing done in the Doctor Strange movie 4 years earlier. So it is evolving the Matrix aesthetic, but no longer evolving visual cinematography.
Yeah, it's to some extent falling into the James Bond trap, because how James Bond for a very snippet of time was like sort of ahead of its time, and then James Bond was running behind every other film idea trying to mimic it into itself.
Right, right. And so we're now that we've done these 4 movies, we're now at the logical end case, which is that 1999 cinematography changed because of The Matrix, and now 2021, The Matrix is catching up. And so we're spending a lot of time talking about a short chunk of the movie, but I feel like the thesis for this movie is kind of weirdly in this 10 minutes, which is we're just going to remake the first 3 movies very cynically, and we're going to show things that you think you want to see. And there's some interesting angry bursts of creativity in here, but they're kind of subsumed by the whole Warner Brothers of it all.
One of the things I can say that was a nice addition for the movie is the fact that programs can now interact in the real world. Like, that was a nice evolution of technology. It was good to see that. I want to
Yes.
things that I really liked. I loved seeing that piece of it.
Similar, how operators can actually now show up as projections in the Matrix. Was another good evolution of the original concept.
And they moved away from payphones. But
Right.
moving away from payphones has created other issues that seem to be inconsistent in the film.
Right. Which we'll get to. So unless you have anything else, we can kind of move on to the next chunk.
I would love to see a movie with Yaya and Jessica as the leads that is not this film.
Yes.
Like
100%.
a detective buddy cop film, a superhero movie. I don't care what it is. That would be an awesome movie.
No,
I take it back. Actually, I care that it's well written.
It's true. But actually, that reminds me of something I did want to say, because I don't think I'll have another place to talk about it, because you're right. Bugs pretty rapidly stops being the lead of the movie, which is a shame, because Bugs is one of the few... Bugs and, frankly, Morpheus 2.0 are 2 of the characters I genuinely enjoyed in this movie. And this is the only point where they get to shine by themselves.
Because the movie has some great other casting choices for people that have, like, a magnetic presence that you want to see on screen. Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead before he even shows up and give a shout out to my guy, Jonathan Groff, who's phenomenal, because I even went and saw him like in Just in Time on Broadway live, and he has presence for miles.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
absolutely,
his Hugo Weaving impersonation may not be my favorite, but I'm going to throw out that he is phenomenal. All right. Those 3 in the movie. That's what I want to say.
Fair enough. Okay. So we get to Thomas Anderson. He is the creator of a video game series called The Matrix, based on his faint memories as Neo. At a coffee shop, he regularly encounters Tiffany, a married mother with no recollection of her past, on whom Anderson has based the game character Trinity. Anderson's created a simulation called a modal to help develop game characters into their own untethered mental state. He struggles to separate perceived reality from dreams, a known concern amongst his coworkers and partner. Thomas's psychoanalyst prescribes him blue pills that he takes every day to suppress the occurrences, but he stops taking them. So this is the first chunk of the first hour, like half an hour of the movie. And this chunk of the movie is one of the ones that I remember the most and stuck in my head the most. Partially because, although we're going to get into another part of it in a minute here, as someone who has worked in the video game industry, it's a lot like this. The people in charge are usually not actual leaders who have failed their way up into a position of authority over way too much money and don't know what the fuck they're doing. And recontextualizing the Matrix movies as video games is both interesting and hilarious, because at no point during any of the chunk of the movie does anyone talk about what the actual gameplay of the Matrix games was. They always talk about the story of the games, which means I have to assume these are like some Metal Gear Solid games where you play for 5 minutes, then watch an hour-long movie. So, ergo, Anderson is Kojima.
But we don't necessarily get them saying what the gameplay is, but if it's based on like Anderson and what he's doing like martial arts fighting things in a VR headset and all that sort of stuff. So you might infer that it's still the same sort of thing based on what he does.
Sure, right. And amusingly, there's a blink and you miss it moment where they're testing a version of the game, and there's some guys in the background with VR headsets, which were, if you remember, very much in vogue in 2020. They're like, it's going to be the future of gaming. And so there's this brief moment where, because we as the audience obviously know this is the Matrix that he's in, so playing the Matrix games making means you would be in a simulation, and arguably, based on how this movie goes, in another simulation. So maybe 3 or 4 simulations deep. This thing like fits virtuality all the way down. It's those little kind of moments are the parts of the movie that I like. It's like there's these little bits of like, oh, there you go. There's a little spark of what these movies were good about. It's like just a throwaway concept that you then just kind of let sit there. But they're so fast and so buried under the gloss of a quote unquote official Matrix movie that they're just almost non existent. You have to dig for them.
That made me realize what I think this movie is. So if we say that Transformers are the OG, GoBots are a copy of them, this movie is a copy of a GoBot.
Right. Yeah. It is. What were they called? Metal Machines. Europe had a different brand name for GoBots. I forget what it is now.
Yeah. Something I did like that's hard to notice if you're not paying attention is that they've talked about if you look in the cafe scene where he meets Tiff, we're not even going to talk about all the computer terms jokes in this film. We're going to let that go. But if you look at the reflections on the table, you see that the different images of people who other people would see them as, which is a nice touch because they don't make it overwhelmingly blatant. But at the same time, that means if you didn't look and notice that, you're wondering why can't people see this as fucking Neo and fucking Trinity?
Right, because one of the things the movie it doesn't gloss over, it just straight up ignores, is I'm a video game creator. I decided I'm going to make a character based off the likeness of an actual human being, a woman that I have never spoken to. And then that woman plays my game and acknowledges this character is based on me. And her response is not to call the cops. Right?
Why are you pulling real life headlines in this film, Eddie?
Right, it's creepy as hell. And proves that this is a simulation because only a dude would think that situation is a plausible path to dating someone.
Yeah. So the other random tidbit, the reason I definitely know about the reflections is one of the tidbits I know is that the reflection of Neo in this was, I don't know if they're still married, but was Carrie-Anne Moss's husband at the time, if not still currently. Just an old age makeup.
Like the actual guy playing her husband?
Like when you see Neo and you see the reflection that other people see of the white-haired version.
Oh.
That was Carrie-Anne Moss's husband at the time, if not currently, because I don't know if they're still married.
Oh, cool. I did know that Moss and Reeves did date briefly after the first Matrix movie, I want to say.
Not surprising. That happens a lot.
Yeah, that's very much what apparently the conversation is like. So, worth going into a little bit. Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves are apparently super good friends. They are very much in each other's pockets, and they've openly said, yes, we dated for a while. It didn't work out. It wasn't because we don't love each other, because we do love each other very much. Just we weren't compatible in that way. And so a lot of the chemistry, it's interesting because like the chemistry you see in the first movie, and even arguably 2003 movies, is more kind of that intense young passion, whereas the chemistry here is much more people who are matured, but you can feel like the very casual chemistry they have now in this movie, even with the Tiff Anderson scenes. This is the chemistry of people who have known each other for a long ass time, which is perfect for the story they're trying to tell, right? Which is these people have known each other for 60 years but didn't realize it, and they just kind of click in that way. But like, it helps that they have legitimately they have been friends for decades and love each other very much in a very platonic way is so cool, because I was like, they've got to be friends because of how much they just click on screen.
Did you know that the guy playing Tiv's husband, I think is Chad Hurusky, who is a guy that's like the director of the Matrix movies and was Keanu Reeves' body double, like stunt double?
That's funny. That's a good meta thing. Again, most of the interesting stuff about this movie is stuff that's not in the movie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, a lot of it is.
Like, for example, we're still in the subplot of Anderson as being given drugs and is choosing not to take drugs, and choosing to take those drugs or not is how he feels normal or not. That is a whole different meaning when the director is trans, right?
Mhm.
And it's the I am choosing on one level, it's the I'm choosing not to opt into the forced reality because I see a different reality for myself because I have a different gender than the one assigned to me at birth. And the other hand, it's the transitional therapy, right? It's like the how much of this is also medication you have to take to live that life. So like, there's a lot of interesting layers that comes with that. But on the screen, it's just, why aren't you taking your meds, dude? Right? It doesn't land unless you have that additional context in your head.
And part of it is also, I'm trying, it doesn't address the mental health other issues associated with it.
Right. Because without, if you read this very shallowly, which we don't do in 2021, but people who would have who grew up watching the movies probably would be watching it very shallowly. This does very much read as, if you have mental health issues and refuse to take your medication, you are more enlightened. And it's a terrible, terrible fucking metaphor.
And not even that, if you've never seen the other Matrix movies before and you just pop onto this movie, that is the takeaway you're going to get because you'll have no
That's even better.
context
Yeah,
for anything else.
that's true. Because on the one hand, I was like, why would you watch this as your first movie? But also, so much of this basically retraces the first movie. You could watch this without having seen the other movies, frankly.
And come on, we know a bunch of people that watch the fourth or fifth installment of a movie without ever having seen anything else all the
Right.
time.
Right. Okay. So in the middle of all of this, this is the heaviest part of the, I'm not even say metaphor, the explicit metatextual Warner Brothers is forcing us to make this movie, right? I mean, again, we have the line from the guy that we will soon learn is Mr. Smith, but he's just his business partner. He doesn't have a name yet. He says that line. Then we get into, again, a great series of meetings that I have been in before. So full context. I worked for several years on the World Darkness MMO. The company that bought White Wolf and then tried to create the MMO were people that had never worked on the original property, but were fans of Vampire the Masquerade. So there were a lot of meetings about what makes Vampire the Masquerade interesting. We have to get to the core of that and reinvigorate that for a new audience, right? And so the conversations about the Matrix, I've had all of those meetings. And they are just as circular and pointless as the movie points out, because the gag is you have Anderson's creative partner saying the same lines, bullet time, bullet time, bullet time, but he's in different outfits at different times of day to show that he's had the same conversation multiple times. And so, like, for me personally, the audience of one, this is extremely funny, right? Because I'm like, yes, that is exactly how these video game meetings go. They're pointless and soul destroying and awful. And I would also want to take drugs to try to avoid having to think about those meetings. So I feel for you, Anderson. But on the other hand, it does kind of tip Lana's hand a bit of like, I don't know what made these movies that good, and kind of owning to that, right? Because I mean, if Anderson's obviously the stand-in for the Wachowskis here, it's like, and he never says these words, but it's very much implied by what's happening here. It's like, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how that happened. And now a lot of people's jobs are riding on me figuring out how to recreate that magic. I don't know how to do it.
It also, though, as someone that grew up poor, has the whiff of the one percenter all about it, as I'm supposed to feel sorry for someone that's in there like super high up office with a beautiful view, eating like this exquisite steak in a restaurant by themselves. There's a
Sure.
lot of that also associated with all that, and so it's the movie seems to be overly conflicted with itself, which
Sure.
is definitely displayed throughout the screen, and like every piece of it is in constant conflict with itself when the story it's trying to tell.
Right, because I mean, one of the things that I'm shocked isn't in this chunk of the movie is the fact that Anderson's literally the architect now, right? He's made this whole thing and on some level. Obviously, it's a level inside the level he's existing in, but he's the architect of his own matrix. And he's also in the same position as the quote unquote villain from the very first movie of someone who wants to ignore the real world and just be rich and indulge himself in a hedonistic way, right? It's like inside of the obvious naked critique of the Matrix movies, we have extremely weirdly missed opportunities to do the exact same thing on a slightly more interesting and subtle level. But again, it feels like the executives working on this movie couldn't get that deeper nuance level. They had to be literally told, no, this is how we're going. And like to the point where even one of the characters in the movie remarks on how are we allowed to say this stuff? Um uh, uh for the audience listeners, because I know you know this, Chris shared with me a pitch meeting video. Pitch meeting is a YouTube series where they make fun of what the pitch meetings for these movies look like and kind of end up making fun of the movie. And at one point in time, the writer pitching the movie talks about this, and the executive is like, "Is this something we need to talk about? Something we need to work through?" And it's like, "No, it's just a metatextual cash grab." It's like, okay, but we still get the actual cash grabbing part. Oh yeah, no, 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 we're totally making money. And it's like, cool, that's fun, you know. And it's like, I feel like the meeting probably went exactly that way. But
Ah,
again, like in the middle of all of this, there's interesting little bits like the company's called Deus Machina, which is obviously a reference to the Machine City, but also it's interesting because it's not the God in the machine, it is just God machine, which is what Anderson is. He is literally making he's the architect, right? So that, again, there's like you could have connected those pieces. There's I already mentioned the VR goggles, right? The one of the buildings in the Matrix is called Anderson's, and it's not the building they work out of. The cafe is called Simulate, right? There's all of these little things in there to really broadcast this is a fake reality.
well, I also, if I remember right, Bugs in one of the action scenes at the start slid down a sign that was Anderson's.
Yeah, right now, yeah. So that's what yes, that's what Anderson's comes from, and you see it again in the street scenes later.
And I guess to take a step to talk about his therapist is in a blue vest, like blue glasses, giving him the blue pills. Like it's
Mhm.
all and to restate something first film, second film, the third film, The Matrix is not subtle. It has never been subtle franchise. I am
Right,
your own personal Jesus. Jesus, 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 Jesus. Boom.
right. But what kind of weirdly happens here is that the kind of tee-hee moment of, "Oh my god, there's a Warner Brothers movie talking about how shit Warner Brothers is," sucks all of the oxygen out of a large chunk of that, so the heavy-handed metaphor seems subtle by comparison, and then the subtle stuff just, again, fades into oblivion as a result.
It's like in movies where they say the blatant stupid thing they're about to do because they think it'll make people laugh and they can get away with doing the stupid thing. This is what it does.
Right, like, it remind me of the end of the Fantastic Four movie where they never say the word Fantastic Four, and then they go, "I know what we can call ourselves," and then they cut to the credits, you know, it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, so, like, I there's a chunk of me that really enjoys this part of the movie in the sense of it accidentally lands on a very scathing critique of the video game industry specifically. But I accidentally is very much the vibe because, like, I think it's supposed to be a scathing critique of the Matrix movies, and it's a bit muddled from that perspective. And it's going to get muddled even more in a minute here. But even at this point in time, it's just like you could see what I'm getting. Assuming Lana was involved in the script writing at any point, it feels like a lot of Lana just trying to work through. I don't know why this worked.
So maybe this is like my Alejandro, but I think for my El Topo, I would have rather this movie have been a delusion that Thomas Anderson had from top to bottom and then erased all the other Matrix movies, and that was this movie.
You know what? I mean,
that's my curiosity to just says fuck it. If you're going to say fuck it, blow it up. Don't fuck knuck around and be like,
honestly, if the first chunk of the movie didn't exist, if it started with Thomas Anderson, there could be a fun half an hour of going, are all three Matrix movies actually inside the video game and don't actually exist the way we think they do?
Yes.
Right? But because the first part of the movie exists, we know that's not true. And so it just feels like it's kind of fumbling around at this point, at least in that regard.
I wanted my Jurioski moment. If we're going to go this far, if you're going to do it right.
Right. Okay. Anything else before I get to the second half of the In the Matrix moment?
No, just gave me a chance to talk about El Topo. That's all.
Every episode. As Bugs and Morpheus work to extract Neo from the Matrix, Anderson's business partner regains his memories as Agent Smith, Neo's former nemesis. His analyst makes a last-ditch effort to keep Anderson in the Matrix along with a swarm of bots, but too late. Neo awakens in the pod and notices Trinity confined in another nearby before being extracted to Bugs' hovercraft, Messamine. Since we have now we have Smith on the board, yes, I think we've pretty much covered. It's unfortunate and it's confusing as to why both of these characters are recast. That said, I do like the fact that the actors are at least trying to do something with these, and to the point where the homages to the original actors I almost didn't want after a while. Like they're doing a lot of stuff, trying to sound like or talk like those original characters. And I feel like the characters were actually stronger when they moved further away from it. And to your point, like Morpheus around this point in time starts becoming his own character. And I like that character way more than when he was trying to be Lawrence Fishburne, frankly. Because like there's a point in here where they're back in the White Room and Morpheus 2.0 is like, he basically redoing Fishburne's line in kind of Fishburne's voice, and he goes, "That's what you expect me to say, but I actually don't know what the hell's going on," right? And it's like, I like Morpheus 2.0. That's good because again, there's this kind of weird meta thing of like, we know these characters have been recast. Let's do something different with it. But that's again sits all atop of the fact is that you had an opportunity to do exactly that in the third movie and completely failed to do that, right? With the Oracle. So this is one of the few critiques that actually work, but I don't think it was intentional in this case.
And so the extraction of Neo.
Right.
First, there's Morpheus in the bathroom.
Yes.
Which
very low rent.
As a guy that like knows a lot of Broadway and musical stuff too from a family, the fact that I'm saying Morpheus in the bathroom makes me want to break out into lyrics of Michael in the bathroom. That is for all my Broadway people out there. I think there's 3 of you that probably listen to it.
Sure.
It is an undercut scene for the gravitas of that versus in like Bugs on the rooftop to stop him from committing suicide.
Right. And it feels low rent is kind of where it's like you're recreating these same scenes in increasingly lower stakes environments, and the piece that we don't quite get yet, but we'll get in a minute here is that instead of using phones, they use mirrors now. That's supposed to be the metaphor. It was phones and it was doors. Now it's mirrors. And so a bathroom has lots of mirrors, so we can have the mirrors there. And it's like, but you couldn't find any place else that has lots of mirrors in it, right? But even then, it's like, okay, maybe this is again a critique of like, what you thought was super high stakes drama is actually a bit shit, you know? But that gets undercut because later in the movie, that thread does not continue through the movie. It's only in the chunk of the movie, so it feels like you're just undercutting Morpheus 2.0.
Yeah, consistently.
Uh, that said, Mr. Smith being recreated as psychotic tech bro lands really well in 2026. So I feel like that was supposed to make I think it was a similar vibe of like, let's undercut Mr. Smith by as opposed to doing this, big dramatic things. Now he's just kind of in a weird boardroom, but like psychotic guy in charge of a major video game company did actually age really well in 5 years. So it's like, okay, that was a kind of an accident, but that worked out pretty well.
So I think it happens here, but when Neo gets shot by Smith and pops back in the analyst office,
Right.
does that mean that Smith killed Neo?
Though this is another interesting bit that doesn't make a damn bit of sense when you think about it, because like I feel like what they're kind of going for is an Inception thing here, right? Because again, the original Matrix movies predate all of his movies. So movies came out that homage the Matrix, and now the Matrix has to get conversation with the things that it inspired. And so it's like, okay, you don't know which level of the Matrix you're in because like the therapist is saying this is all delusion, but we know it's not a delusion. So which is true? And whereas in the first movie, and I'm intentionally ignoring the second two movies, in the first movie, those kinds of unsure moments were interesting and compelling. It was because way back in the first movie, we had that color code to keep track of. We knew which reality we were in because of what grading of color the movie had on the screen. There's none of that here. And this bit never actually adequately gets explained. So it's just there because someone in the meeting room went, "Oh, this would be a mind fuck," and that's it. It's just a way to kind of do a bit because the Matrix is all about layered reality, so we have to do a bit about he's not sure which reality he's in, even though the last 35 minutes have been exactly that. And the scene also does kind of show the increasing menace of the analyst, which again is a weird fucking metaphor to get across to audiences that mental health therapists are evil and are out to destroy you.
I thought we'd moved away from that because the 90s was where that was huge. Like analysts were
Right.
always evil and bad.
Right. So yeah, like I actually don't know what happened, I was waiting. I remember this thing happens. Like I'm sure there's probably a bit I missed, and I'll watch it again. I'll look for it, and no,
Because we know that if they die in the Matrix, the real body dies. And so, minor
right.
spoiler if you've already watched it, not a spoiler, but we know that they had to rebuild Neo. Does that mean every time this Neo fucking dies, the analyst has to spend all that money, finger quotes, resources, to have him rebuilt again?
Right. Which leads to an interesting bit of unintentional hilarity in a minute here. But yes,
And if so, how long does that take? Because these motherfuckers are in the Matrix right now. If it takes like a decade, Bugs would be a lot older.
right. That's the thing is like, if it weren't in the middle of a heist with actual humans, you could have easily, Anderson screwed up and we had to rebuild him. I gotta rebuild the Matrix again. It sucks. But people are actually in the Matrix right now when this is happening, so that doesn't work.
And for me, the movie isn't moving or engaging enough, drawing me in, that I can't turn off that logical part of my brain to notice. So it's a weird disconnect. Like,
right. And then again, like in the midst of all of this, because we've said repeatedly, the Matrix is not a subtle franchise. You're trying to pair, like, well, this is kind of interesting. I'm trying to figure out what this means and how this all fits together. And then, like 5 minutes later, you have Anderson literally walking through a showing of the first Matrix movie, and then someone says the line, "Nothing comforts anxiety like a little nostalgia." I think Morpheus says that, and it's just like not anything resembling subtle. And again, in the first movie, that worked well because there was a very clear demarcation of these bits are very obvious, these bits are left up for audience imagination, and we don't really cross those streams. The second and third movie started to blur those lines, but mostly it was in the esoteric stuff stays in the Matrix, and the hard, gritty, finger quotes, sci-fi stays in the real world. And the third movie screwed that up. But frankly, it was okay till near the end, and then near the end, it's like, okay, that's all messed up. Now we're just like everything's just up for grabs.
And this would also be the scene where we get Morpheus and Neo again in their dojo having a fight because it was done in the first movie.
Right. And so that's another interesting bit. We recreate the White Room, we create the fight scene. But something I noticed this time around, and when you showed me that pitch meeting video, really cinched it in for me. Keanu is not fighting that much at all.
Mm-hmm. He's all Sue Storm.
What?
He's all Sue Storm.
Yeah, he's all like things.
Force fields.
And
force field.
If the John Wick movies didn't exist, I would say, oh, it's because Keanu's older now, maybe he can't do this stuff, but we know he can do this stuff. Or at least we can make it look like he's doing this stuff. Because again, the John Wick movies exist. So the only benefit of the doubt I can give that, because Neo punching people was literally part of the brand, right? Is that it was filmed during COVID, and maybe that was their way to get around keeping Keanu safe physically during COVID. That is the only excuse I could possibly come up with to salvage that. I think it's weak as hell.
Then you don't make this movie. You make a Matrix movie with brand new people.
Which, arguably maybe Lana realized that, and maybe that's the reason why she wanted to quit. I don't know. Again, it's so muddy. It's so just a lot of pieces here.
Because the entire time throughout this movie, I saw him as Sue Storm, like deflecting this, deflecting that.
And and the thing is, like, the other, again, I'll say the Sense8 cast now because I don't want to use the word kids anymore. But like the newer people who came into this, they just need to be putting their all into it, right? So there definitely feels like there is an undercurrent of these are the actors who can carry this franchise on. Because Bugs and Morpheus 2.0 do seem like they're trying their hardest to make the physical parts of this work.
Then the entire movie should have been restructured.
I agree.
It should have followed more, as I like The Force Awakens, even though it does some retread, because Han and Chewie were highlights of the film. They were not the film.
Right. That's actually a really good point, because, like, again, we were dancing on that, but The Force Awakens is kind of the movie we were referencing about this is the same vibe of like carrying on the porch. I do actually like The Force Awakens for exactly that, because regardless of how direction it goes in and what it does with it, that first movie does hand off the baton. And like you said,
we've covered The Force Awakens for the Patreon, but the spoiler for that is that movie has enough nostalgia to bring in the old fans, but also new enough to get new fans interested in what you need to reboot a franchise, so the second and third films can be something different.
Right.
I'm not going to say what they did with those, but regardless, Force Awakens succeeded. This did not, because it focused too much on the older characters at the detriment of the newer characters.
Right. And even at this point in time, I was first watching it, I was like, okay, the first three movies were heavily centered around Neo. And so at some point in time, you have to address that. So starting from the point where the world literally exists around Neo, it's not a bad starting place. But you do have to get rid of that. We'll talk about that in a minute. They do make an attempt at that, but in completely the wrong direction. But like at this point in time, you're right. Like it's there's a lot of attempts to have. There's a larger crew here, but ultimately it's Bugs and Morpheus 2.0. There are other characters and they're all involved. I'm not trying to diminish any of them, but that's kind of the two secondary leads functionally. And at this point of the movie, it's like there's attempts to, but Keanu keeps getting pushed out in front more than he needs to be for. And again, especially if he can't fight, there's lots of reasons for him like saying, "I don't," he immediately makes the line, "I still know kung fu." It's like you can literally just not do that. You do the exact opposite route. I no longer know kung fu, and then they have to fight for him and protect him. It becomes an escort quest. It's so easy to make that change, but it didn't happen.
All right, I think we're ready for the next pieces. Look, we're banging on the door for it.
Right, because I mean, honestly, well, that 51 minutes in is when Neo wakes up. That is 51 minutes of being in the Matrix.
Well, do we need to talk to this movie's like 2.5 hours?
Yeah, it is the longest Matrix movie to date. Yes. Okay, so Neo is brought to the human city Io, the sister city of Zion, where he is reunited with an elderly Niobe. Whew. She explains that 60 years have passed in the real world since the machine war ended, and that Neo's allies, including the original Morpheus, have all died over time. The peace achieved by Neo's sacrifices lasted for many years, but a large number of humans leaving the Matrix created a serious power shortage, causing machines to fight over limited resources. Soon afterward, Zion was targeted in an attempt to get humans to use as a power source once more. However, this attempt caused many machines, who still remembered Neo's sacrifice at the promise of peace, to turn on the others in order to protect the humans. This allowed most of Zion's citizens to escape. Io is then founded by both machines and humans who have been working together ever since against the remaining machines who want to return things to the way they were before the war. Niobe refuses to risk Io's safety to help Neo free Trinity and confines him to his quarters. That long bit is like 6 minutes of exposition and a couple of other scenes. And for my money, by far the most interesting part of this movie, that is a decent way to move the status quo forward. And there's a lot of interesting stuff here, and it's a shame the movie doesn't do anything with it except for having some machines on the crew.
They set it up for the next video game that's going to come out in 2022, Eddie.
Right. I'm sorry. They're not machines, they're synthiats, which is a line that was clarified and then promptly ignored for the rest of the movie as well, which tells you a lot about this.
So I'm trying to remember. I vaguely remember that in the video game, you mentioned Morpheus was killed, but I can't remember if it was like an assassin or if it was a suicide bombing. It's something about that is how Morpheus.
Specifically, he was killed by a character literally called the Assassin.
Okay. And in this, he died defending Zion, right?
Because as I understand it, I didn't look this up deeply, but as I understand it, okay, so brief sideways.
Right now, I'm already noticing a canonical error.
As I understand it, again, not deeply into what happened in Matrix Online for a video game and longer online itself, but as I understand it, after the events of the movie, Morpheus was elected to the head of the council. Then the counselors slowly started getting killed off in attrition, war, things happen. Locke specifically apparently was killed. So Morpheus is kind of left with the defense of Zion. And so he was able to, as a result, a lot of the other captains, when I started to kind of break off and consider making their own places, because it's like, listen, we're just getting assassinated. We need to go. Zion's no longer safe. Morpheus's sheer charisma manages to keep everyone together so they can still defend the city against the last gasp of hardline machines. The machines hire the assassin to kill him in the Matrix, so he dies at a strategic point before the machines attack the city. You can almost see it from a video game perspective, like how those events would be structured to make sense for you're the captain trying to get people to side with Morpheus. Like you can see it kind of stuff might be planning out, but it's way too over convoluted, and also brings up kind of another big problem I have with this movie was we've talked about how it may or may not be true. But for a moment, let's assume that this is Lana trying to acknowledge and honor the legacy of the video game. We run into a Doctor Who the movie situation, right? To reference, I think we've actually talked about this 1996 Doctor Who movie. Sylvester McCoy's in it for 15 minutes and then gets killed. Literally gunned down randomly.
Best 15 minutes of movie.
Yes. But the point is that if this is supposed to be a hard reboot, seeing a character being told he's the Doctor and then killing him off, replacing him with a completely different actor 15 minutes into the movie makes no fucking sense. It only makes sense if you feel like you're beholden to what came before. This is the exact same problem, right? Because they can't explain all of the plot of the Matrix Online, so they have to kind of gloss over it. But by glossing over it, it feels like we still want to hire for Lawrence Fishburne.
Eddie, this movie is like nearly 2.5 hours. They could have spent an extra 2 minutes on Morpheus and Lawrence Fishburne to come back to do this. Like
I
even
agree.
even just like a scene of him doing something would have helped assuage some of the stuff, but nothing.
Right. Now, as much as I don't like any of that, when we talked about 2 and 3, specifically 3, we talked about how it was way too fucking long, and they could combine those into one movie. And one of the things we talked about, if I remember, was combining some characters up even. There's a lot of character. I can make a mild argument that by shoving Morpheus and Locke all into Niobe is a decent way to streamline this plot that we're going to go through again. The problem is, it really ruins Niobe as a character. Aside from the terrible age makeup.
Yeah.
But Niobe is a completely different character now. And there's one point in time where she literally has to say lines like, when I was younger, I would have done that, but I can't do that now. And it's like, basically acknowledging that, yes, the characters I was written would have done this, but I can't do it because the plot requires me to go in this direction.
Eddie, do we even need to talk about how the young, fair-skinned rogue cop is out there telling the chief they're going to do it their way regardless, and the chief's always a grizzled old black person? Do we need to go there?
I mean, we don't need to go there. Right. I mean, but to be fair, also, Morpheus did do that multiple times in the movies too, so it's not that unheard of.
But my thing is, though, this movie has so many of these things. It is like, it's an albatross around this movie. Is that it can't move away from its own stereotypes and its own remixes, is what it's coming down to. Because there are some great ideas here, and all of them, they went, nah.
Yeah, because when I was first watching this, I was like, okay, how are you going to recover from that status quo? There's two really bad ways you could recover from this, and this is from a pure lore perspective, is a decent middle ground way to recover from it, where we're not invalidating Neo's original sacrifice. We're acknowledging that there was actual lasting repercussions from the hour, and arguably the original architect said, how long would that piece last? And the answer is 60 years, turns out, so like, even that, like, this will eventually happen again, but it is not the same configuration that we saw at the end of the third movie, is a good idea. But nothing, we'll get to that, but nothing really happens from that core assumption.
And this movie has the same problem that movies 2 and 3 had. It has a Neo problem. Like, at the end of movie 1, they made Neo all powerful. They didn't know what to do with that in 2 and 3, so they kept benching Neo. They had him be a long way away. Something always happened. And now in this, Neo has to relearn his powers.
Right. And yeah, well, anyway, let's get to that, because next chunk of the movie is he's been confined in quarters. So Bugs, the crewmates, actually free Neo and go back to the Matrix to contact Trinity. They're attacked by Smith and other exiled programs, including the Merovingian. But Neo and the Yosemite crew defeat them as Neo's abilities return. The group leaves and locates Trinity, but before Neo can convince her to leave with him, his therapist appears and immobilizes him and her, both in manipulating time. So just to clarify, we're stopping before the analyst's monologue. That's the next chunk. So we're stopping right when he's about to start that.
I want to point out, Eddie, that literally this movie has got the entire Matrix universe, from like freeing all of humanity and everything else, has moved into saving the princess from the tower. That's this whole movie. Because Trinity is in a tower, because Neo is in a tower with her, so we know it's an isolated tower.
No, I'm not going to argue with it all. I was actually going to remark that was literally the opposite point of the third movie. Right? Was Well, okay, I take it back. It's not entirely true. Because the second movie was the architect literally saying, "You can't possibly just save Trinity," and Neo's like, "Fuck you, I will." And the third movie was, "We can't save Trinity because we have to, defend Zion." And Neo's like, "Cool, give me a ship. I'll fucking do it anyway." So, like in that regard, this does extend from Neo as we understand him, right? The problem is how fast everyone else gets on board that train, because there are two whole movies of people not getting on that train, and people going, "Whoa, Neo, we think you're the one," and literally, Jesus' son. But hang on a minute here. And this movie is like, "Yep, nope, literally everyone except for Niobe's on board with this," and even Niobe's like, "I probably would have, but I can't because I got a job now."
I
Um, and then like to get to Smith and the exile programs, right? It's like, of course, we're gonna fight with Smith, and it's eh. But
but it's not even a fight with Smith. Smith literally does not want to fight.
right, and that's the weird thing is like Smith's like, "I kind of have to fight you because these other programs need to be free, and you're in the way of that." And eventually that makes sense, but at the time it's just like, "What are you talking about? You're Agent Smith. You fight Neo." And it feels like that's literally the only reason why you're fighting here is because that's what you do. And it doesn't
But he
help that the
literally told them,
Merovingian. Oh, go ahead.
like, if you leave, we don't got to do this, man. Like, get the fuck out and let me handle it. Literally, that's what it boils down to.
Right. It doesn't help that the Merovingian's also present, and he's literally just screaming how movies these days suck. Right? Like, first of all, we didn't like the Merovingian of 2 or 3 anyway. So bringing him back was not exactly something I was looking forward to. But I had forgotten how inconsequential. He's literally just a cameo. And he just screams at people. He's not fighting. He's not in any way, shape, or involved with the conflict, and disappears after the scene.
He's a hobo.
Right.
I'm sorry. I apologize for the term hobo. He would be disenfranchised, but from the movie, it does not even present him in that good of a light. And the fact that like his sidekicks, remember when the sidekicks were at least cool, where they were like werewolves and took silver bullets to kill him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now they're just people.
Or when they were so cool that when Neo had all his powers and he was the one, he barely beat them. But these noob guys, easy peasy.
Right. And again, this could have been a moment where Neo tries to claim his powers and can't, allowing the new cast to step in and show how cool they are. But as soon as Smith steps into the scene, the movie forgets about everybody else.
Because Jonathan Groff is so magnetic, all he wanted to do is watch him on screen.
Right. And what makes it more damning is that earlier on in the movie, when we're doing all those endless boardroom scenes, we literally had characters going to Matrix. It's all about fighting, and it's about Neo and Mr. Smith. It's like the movie was telling you, here's all the regurgitated bullshit you're going to see. And instead of critiquing that, just proceeds to unabashedly, unalloyedly present them to you.
In a way that's even showing, I don't want to do this, but this is what you want to see, so I'm showing it to you anyway.
Right. Which is fascinating. It's not good. It's terrible, but it's fascinating. It's like the movie's like going, this is gonna be some crap. Here you go. And it's like the movie, sure enough, gives you exactly that. It's like, oh, I thought you were gonna. No, we're just okay.
You realize what the Marvel equivalent of this movie is now, don't you?
WandaVision? No, that's not true.
No, She-Hulk.
Oh, yeah.
It's sitting here. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say no. I saw WandaVision. I realized no, because WandaVision is a critique of a different medium using superheroes as a springboard, which is interesting. She-Hulk is here's how stupid you are for liking Marvel movies as a Marvel TV show.
Yes, and this is how stupid you are for thinking this is what I'm trying to give you. Right. In a way that's like just doesn't care that you don't like it.
Right.
And I'm more fascinated by the amount of money they threw at it to make something they knew that people would not like. It's intentional. It has to be intentional.
But then we get to the analyst scene, which, unless you have something else to talk about, gives us another interesting turn. So the analyst is a program designed to study the human psyche. He explains that after Neo and Trinity's death, he wanted to study Neo's body and his anomalous powers as the One and convince his superiors to resurrect both of them. He discovered that due to the One's inherent connection to all humanity in the Matrix, manipulating Neo could make the Matrix produce more energy. Moreover, he found that the code anomaly in Neo was shared in his bond with Trinity, and that by surpassing their memories and keeping them close but always apart, the Matrix generated much more energy. Solving the energy crisis put the analyst in a position to seize power from the architect, after which he rebuilt the Matrix to control humans with emotional manipulation, claiming that humans generally believe what they want to believe. This is simultaneously interesting, regurgitated nonsense, and the exact same argument the previous movies made, all at once. Right? Like, humanity can't handle utopia, and so has to fight with each other. We've had that argument multiple pre-Matrix movies. That is nothing, no way, shape, or form new. It is terrible because the argument is that's what the architect wasn't doing, which it was literally what the architect was doing. And we have a midichlorians problem of you have unique code. Something about your code and Trinity's code means in ways we can't replicate because we're computers and can't possibly duplicate code. Right? But buried in all of this is this amazing idea of this is an energy crisis. And part of the reason why the machines are changing their tactics is because they don't have the energy they used to. And if the movie was actually based around this concept, I would be way more excited about it. Instead, it is just a random line to get to why Neo and Trinity are special, which again, we don't need to know that because we have been told that by 3 previous movies.
Because it's a love story.
It's a love story.
Yeah.
And then
this movie doesn't even deserve my Nick Cage joke for me.
Oh wow, okay, wow, all right, that's impressive.
At least the first 3 did.
There's an interesting metatextual joke, and it's not a good joke. It's not even a joke, but it's kind of a reference, I guess, which is bullet time. Bullet time is the technique of shooting that the 1999 Matrix movie created. And it's become so ubiquitous that it was a kind of a running joke in the brainstorming scenes about what's the part of Matrix? Bullet time. It's one word, bullet time. Bullet time is 2 words. And then the analyst makes that joke here. But in the boardroom scenes, someone makes a straight comment. I think it's actually the woman who plays Martha Jones. I think she makes a straight comment of like, isn't bullet time technique, not the concept? And someone goes, da, 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 and blue glosses over it, right? And so you have this interesting metatextual joke of the analyst bringing a concept outside the movie into the movie and making it a thing in a way that the audience would recognize. By the way, this wasn't actually part of the movies, but you now know it's connected with the movies, so now bring it into the universe of the movies, right? And so, like, there's these tiny little bits of fourth wall breaking things that the analyst specifically is doing, and this doesn't help by the fact that now the toy maker exists, and Neil Patrick Harris playing both those characters, so like those are a bit conflated in my head now. Apparently, his role in the past 5 years has been be metatextual villain, but he's great at it, so I'm not gonna be mad about it, right? So, like, now that the toy maker exists, I wanted retroactively more of that happening with the analyst here because you see small shades of that, of him just going, because the Matrix is a series of games and you as the audience recognize the Matrix, we're acknowledging the Matrix as a media property. The analyst and Anderson can have a conversation about that. And it's 10% there, but then it gets swamped by just shit we've already heard from other movies and stuff that makes no goddamn sense.
Yeah, they essentially want you to know they combine the architect and the Oracle into one person.
Right. Which again, I can see the logic of streamlining these movies, but that was not a part of the movie that needed to be streamlined. And in fact, that was part of the movie that was interesting. Even though we certainly near the end of the third movie, we were mad about how that relationship turned out. The idea of two different two different programs fighting for control of the Matrix was itself a compelling consideration, even if it was done badly. And this is just gets rid of the analyst now literally referencing off-screen characters. And again, if this is supposed to be a movie that I won't say gently, very aggressively recreates the first movie so that if a launching point for new people, referencing all this stuff that has nothing to do with this movie makes no sense either. Right? There's lots of it goes back to Morpheus. We have to honor the original movies before. It's like, but do you really?
Did you know that I think Neil Patrick Harris and his husband actually make a sci-fi book series for their kids? I think that might have been around this time.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but I think it has like 3 or 4 books in it. It's like a book series. It's pretty well known.
Huh, I may have to go check that out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
More so this movie.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll stop. I'm not going to stop dragging the movie. I'm not even dragging the movie that bad. I'm bringing up specific points, just not blah blah. The idea, though, that they could steal bullet time to use against the one as a special power is a nice idea.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily love how it's executed. And even more so when you think about it, like the lackey from The Office that was talking about bullet time is definitely the analyst fucking with Neo was a nice callback. Like that was a good little piece of drama.
Yeah, and like I said, like if they could have done more with that, I've been so cool.
How'd you like the endless boots, by the way?
Very cool. I liked them.
That's it. That's all I got. If I'm going to start talking about the boots, that's all I got. They were cool.
Okay. Neo and Bugs return to Io and talk to Sati, an exiled program that Neo previously met in the previous movie. She explains that Neo's liberation destabilized the system and triggered a failsafe to reboot the Matrix, but the analyst stalled the reboot by convincing his superiors that threatening to kill Trinity would coerce Neo to return to his pod. Seeking to avenge her parents' deaths at the hands of the analyst, Sati helps devise a plan to free Trinity. Back in the Matrix, Neo makes a deal with the analyst. He will return to his pod if he fails to convince Trinity to leave the Matrix. Tiffany affirms her identity as Trinity while talking with Neo. Realizing he has lost, the analyst attempts to kill her, but Agent Smith appears and attacks him, seeking revenge for his own imprisonment after being restored as a result of Neo's resurrection. Okay. Of all of the plot threads I thought this movie was going to address, I never expected Sati to be one that they felt they had to deal with.
The first time I watched this movie, and I saw, God, you know her name before we started, but I don't remember her name. I saw her. I knew, even when she was like in her little role in like the restaurant, whatever it was, I was like, that's going to be the daughter from the other movie because she is too popular or well known of an actress to like that be her full role. Like,
oh yeah, you're not going to have her just be the little girl go in the corner. No, she's got to be something.
and I figured with all the callbacks, it had to be that character because that's the only one that makes sense. Right. And I feel good about myself for putting that together with all the callbacks.
Oh, totally. And like,
because it's obvious.
Well, again, it's the Matrix movies, right? So like, obvious is not the problem. It's weirdly when it tries to get too subtle when it gets to the areas of the problems. But I was surprised just because, like, as we remarked, it's such a weird nothing of a scene, right? It's a bit that goes nowhere, and in a world where this movie didn't exist, it's even more pointless. Now it's like, okay, there's actually weirdly finally a payoff for something in the previous movies that did actually need, in air quotes, addressed. It didn't really need to be addressed. It needed to be removed. But if it exists, okay, there's actually some payoff. Her parents were murdered off screen, which is a reasonable conclusion from the train master. I forget his name. The train keeper. Whatever his guy was, the conductor. And so she, as a program, grew up, and because we have this world where rogue programs exist and they're trying to help out with humans, that's a logical, interesting extension. But then she just gives a bunch of info dumps and nopes out of the movie.
She does not nope out of the movie. She Galadriel's into this motherfucking movie.
Well, for sure, but she's not. There's not a ton happening with her.
Literally, look in my fucking magic pool as we do these things in my magic pool of water. I'm sorry, programs. Oh,
Right. So now not only are we remaking the Matrix movies, now we're making other movies.
they went fucking Lord of the Rings even for this thing. Jesus. Which I'm willing to bet there are
Right.
probably a bunch of Lord of the Rings references I didn't call out
Right.
before, but this one is just too obvious not to.
Right. But again, buried in all of this monologuing, there's a throwaway line to something happens in the fetus fields, and then they just never go back to it. And I was like, this is the bits of the Matrix that I love, is when they're just like, here's a world thing that exists, and everyone goes, oh my god, that's fetus fields. Similar to like you told us never to go on the highway. It's in that same space, and I love that stuff. So it's like, okay, there's tiny bits of like, okay, this is what I actually like about the Matrix movies. Why in the hell is it the fetus fields? Why is it called the fetus fields? What kind of imagery is that in creating in your head, right? It's like, yeah, of course they're farming. It's like they're just growing babies like corn on some large chunk of the earth. Like that's horrifying and awful and so glossed over. And it's like that's the kind of Matrix. That's the only thing close to subtlety in the Matrix movie should be doing is that kind of stuff. But it
All
happens
right, so
once in the
I want
scene.
to take it. I want to take a step back because your fetus feels made me remember something I want to ask about. How are they able to totally rebuild Neo and Trinity? And how are they able to like rewrite their personalities to be who they were and everything else? And
Well,
coupled with why?
I
If it's a
mean,
code like their Star Wars midichlorians
midichlorians.
just need to be close to each other, there is zero reasoning of the personalities. Just make them like bodies with those midichlorians and stick them close together.
Well, right. The movie, by trying to be clever, ends up causing us to ask questions that we shouldn't be asking. I mean, it also brings up the big problem of like, if there's an energy crisis, why are you spending energy rebuilding the most complicated character in your reality? Right? It seems like the analyst makes a comment about, my projections are up, and it's like, okay, but you probably had to invest a lot of energy first to get there, and you're glossing over that bit in a pretty, and because you brought up energy now and the fact that energy is a scarce resource being fought over, all of us are talking about feels like it should involve using energy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not I mean, yes, there's the "Why did you do it this way?" question, but also "How did you do it this way?" question. And Sati, by trying to explain what's actually going on, makes things worse because it's okay, I could have just glossed over that because the analyst is a lying pack of shit, but now this is the character you're supposed to trust who's backing up that story in even worse ways.
Which then they pull like the Great Escape, like their heist move. But why is Bug able to replicate Trinity? Does that now mean that Bug is also the one? Or are they going to go into the whole Force Awakens thing where everyone has the Force, so we all are the one? So we go back to El Topo's Dune version, where everyone becomes humanity in one big thing and we're all more deep together in space. Boom!
To be fair, I think that would have been a better ending, but
It all goes
stuff
back to
didn't even go.
Jodorowsky. Everything.
Right, obviously.
That's going to be my new take on every single movie we cover now going forward.
Clearly, all movies are ultimately go back to that Dune movie that never got made.
But seriously though, why is it that Bug can replicate Trinity if these are the two and they have special codes that they need? There is no reason why Bug should be able to do that unless Bug also has a code. But if Bug has a code, then how many people have the code?
Yeah, and it leads to a weird trope. The trope is not weird, because the trope is the girl one. It's unfortunately a very common trope. It's weird in the fact that this movie has a lot of women in it, and yet somehow they managed to carve out space for still that trope to rear its head. The reason why Bug can do this is because Bug is the only female who has the capacity to go into Matrix who can fill that role. And it's like, that's terrible.
And before a movie that has so many like potential amazing women that could be in it, why is it still about fucking Neo?
We'll get to their attempt to try to change that because we're about to wrap up. So let's just wrap it up. because then we'll talk about that fucking twist.
And I love Keanu
So,
Reeves. I think Keanu Reeves is
yeah.
awesome. He's. Ugh.
So Neo, Trinity, and the others escape in their vehicles, chased through the streets by hordes of bot programs and attack helicopters. As the last ones to be extracted from the Matrix, Neo and Trinity become cornered on top of a skyscraper. Holding hands, they leap off, and Trinity begins to fly, taking them to safety. With Trinity's newfound control over the Matrix, both return to confront the analyst. They thank him for giving him a second chance of resurrecting him. Did I skip over a chunk? I did skip over a chunk. I'm sorry. Let me back up. I skipped over a whole chunk. Apologies. No, I did. I didn't.
No, you didn't. You talked about them. We skip over the fight scene. The one thing we really miss from that is that Smith shows up and kills the analyst in that version and then fucks off. He gets a straight line, though. Neo, you could have been anyone, but I am everyone, or something like that, then fucks off. Like,
right. No, yeah.
That was the big twist.
We were focused on the Saudi scene. I forgot about the, yeah, I did want to briefly mention, when we talked about the first Matrix movie, we talked about how one of the reasons it was innovative is because it kept switching through genres. And then, at least I had remarked that second and third movie never did it again, because this is how Matrix movies are made now. That one bit is one of the times a Matrix movie, this isn't the first one, attempts that you try to do a new genre. In that case, it's a zombie film, right?
Yep.
So from that perspective, it's this little gasp of like, again, you're trying to recontextualize genres that don't normally fit together and get something new out of it and get some energy out of that. What you get out of that is a retread of the highway fight combined with some really fucking awful suicide ideation.
And this goes back to a large extent now of a question I had about the morality of our heroes killing all these people that they're trying to free from the Matrix. And that is magnified here considerably.
Right. Okay, so then after that, yes, Trinity gets control of the Matrix. They return to confront the analysts. They thank him sarcastically for giving them a second chance by resurrecting them, while they also express their contempt. Neo and Trinity fly off into the sky together, making plans to remake the Matrix. And then a post-credit sequence, two of the employees of Deus Machina pitch a cat video version called the Catrix. That's canon. The Catrix exists. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
hey Eddie,
yeah,
can I copyright something right quick?
Sure. What?
I'm going to copyright the Pugtrix, so you can't have it. It's mine now.
First of all, it's not how copyright works. And second of all, I think you'll find that Pugs wearing sunglasses is already owned by Men in Black.
Ah, oh, damn it. There went my brilliant idea. All right, Hollywood, I'm still coming.
Side note, turns out 200 bespoke pairs of glasses were made for this movie. Anyway, by far the most important piece of information you need to know about the Matrix Resurrections. 200. Which makes me think of the Wonder Man sequence. They made his sunglasses. I think it's that same guy. I think that guy literally beat all the Matrix. Anyway, so from the end of this, like I understand some of the choices, because a lot of the Matrix and the second two Matrix movies, just because they were coming off of that, there was that kind of late 90s X-Files, shadowy government agents are secretly stealing our freedoms vibe that those movies are channeling from, and that just doesn't work in 2021. And so the fear, the contemporary fear is common people will do horrible things to you without provocation or notice, right? That's the concern. And certainly as a trans creator, I can certainly understand the fear of anyone can randomly turn and attack you for no apparent reason. I get all that. It is crammed into an action sequence at the end of the movie. Yes, the bot swarms are referenced earlier, but they're not really meaningful until this part of the movie. Everyone else was just an escaped program or something else that was very specific to the Matrix. This is the first time that, like you said, innocent people just became possessed and then died. So it's shoved into a small part of the movie, and therefore the theme has no room to breathe. And the answer to we need to make sure Neo is not the Superman is to make Trinity the Superman, which again, I keep saying as a trans creator because I really don't want to put so much on the trans identity of this movie, but it's really hard to escape the fact that it, two men created the Matrix about a man, and then a woman creates this trans movie where the woman becomes the one. Like there's a pretty obvious parallel here, you know. So I get the instinct for that, but I think you and I have both come to the conclusion like that wasn't the answer. You've not passed the torch. You've literally just moved the torch from one hand to the other.
It should have been a Bug movie. It should have been Bug. And if they wanted to save it to be like saving the people in the tower, the whole movie could have been Bug getting even Morpheus 2.0 and the crew together to go and save both Neo and Trinity from there.
Yeah.
Which means they could have ended the movie with them having the pod, so we don't know if Neo and Trinity are alive, because I could swear the original intent of the third Matrix movie was to not have to feature these two people anymore, and they could go into a larger universe. This movie erases that completely, regardless of how I feel about the third movie. But this erases that completely and recenters them as a key to this entire franchise.
Right. Especially considering the fact that they recast two of the characters in this movie for whatever reasons. We've gone through all the stated reasons. We don't know why. Logically, you could have done that then for Neo and Trinity too.
Yeah.
And then it could be, okay, Bugs becomes the new Trinity. Morpheus 2.0 also becomes the one. Whatever. You could do something with that. And I feel that might be interesting in the sense of we've resurrected Morpheus as a program, and then he merges with a human being, and then between them they become the one. Something like that. I don't know, but like the point is, like,
we could move completely away from the one. Like we could leave the one being Trinity and Neo, but they're stuck in their pods and can't figure it out. And then we have like entire Matrix movies about other people running around in the Matrix universe that now with like IO and like both machines and humanity working together versus things. Beautiful fucking concept to like get into stuff on, you know what? I'll even truncate it down more on an Andor level where you're moving away from like all those superpowers into what this should have been and tell those stories. And it could be amazing. But instead, we keep going back to the fucking Skywalkers for some goddamn fucking reason, making the entire universe feel small.
Right. And so much of this, like you said, is an own goal, right? Like, okay, let's say for the moment that you have to have Keanu and Karen and Moss in this. Okay, cool. Maybe that's just a requirement of the contract or whatever, or the studio demands it. But like the movie goes out of its way to put Anderson back to zero. He reawakens to his identity, but then gives him a bunch of powers, only to then take them away to give them a Trinity at the last minute. Right?
But no, Eddie. Like they essentially give Trinity the powers, but at the end of the movie, they both have the powers. So that was a last minute move. So it even undercuts Trinity there because then she is even still not the one. They're the two. And so it gives Trinity like 30 seconds to be awesome.
Right. And most of the time, weirdly, how Trinity is handled is a potential path forward for this movie could have been, right? Because like Trinity being sublimated into Tiffany and Neo sublimated into Anderson, if that had just extended, right? And then the new crew is like, okay, we need to rescue these people because they're people. They've been resurrected. But it's like, listen, they're just never going to be what they were before. That would even been an interesting critique of the original movies. Like it's these people, they were great once. They were symbols. They were heroes. They can never be what they were before. We've got to carry on the torch. We've got to embody their spirit. But we still should save them because they're people that need our help. Right.
Yeah.
So you can still have had them rescuing the Matrix, but still could have had Bugs and her crew be the stars of the movie. There are so many different paths for all of this that could have happened. And that's what makes this movie so fascinating to me, right? Is that there are lots of there's a lot of this movie, and it's such a unique constraint of creator celebrity and studio pressure and filming and trying to release a movie during COVID specifically, and reboot culture in the middle of a Marvel Cinematic Universe led money drive. All of those factors led to making this movie, and it is not good. But there's so many bits and pieces of this movie that if you took them out and put them into a different configuration, could be a genuinely compelling fourth Matrix movie. But all of that is under the understanding that we needed a fourth Matrix movie, which in and of itself is such an obvious question that even the movie itself asks it. Right? So, like, weirdly, criticism of this movie from my end has layers just like the Matrix layers. Like, I mean, each time I pull out from one level of criticism, I find a whole new level of criticism about the movie, which makes it fascinating to talk about, but maybe not great to watch.
I accept that there needed to be a fourth Matrix movie because the Wachowskis, we even talked about when we started this, entered a deal with Warner Brothers to make, like, I think it was like 3 movies, and there was like an extension to make this other Matrix movie. And so I think Warner Brothers officially owns the IP or something like that for the Matrix.
Sure. Makes sense.
And we've already established corporation wants to make money. Corporation,
Right.
money, what do we do? Boom,
Sure.
you signed up to that.
I meant creatively. I don't think we need a fourth movie, but yes, obviously financially that was going to happen. No one's in question about that.
So baseline, if you signed up for it, we could go back or talk about how you make the best deal at the time that you can because of yada yada yada, whatever.
Yep.
Established. We talked about that in the past. Under that assumption, then I think you as a creative, if you want to be involved, have an onus to make the best movie possible or whatever the best thing possible is for your audience and to get a larger audience. So then you get a chance to tell the story that you want to tell and retake whatever your narrative is. And I can't speak to if that was accomplished from this or not, because I am not a Wachowski. I don't know that. I'm telling you from my ideals and my perspective, this movie does not accomplish that. It tries to go and bite at the people that gave them the money to make the thing that they came to in the first place to do the thing, and insult the people that supported the thing while not attacking the people that took and perverted their concepts into something evil. So it's failing for me on so many multiple levels, and I am so frustrated at this movie because I see the potential it had to have gone and done something spectacular in the age we're in with the creator that we had to be more than it is. And that frustrates me so much because it has so many people I love in this movie. It has so many great ideas it could have gone for. And I'm even going to put aside the fact that it should have been a movie about Trinity if you're going to do it, and not a movie about Neo saving Trinity.
Right.
But it's so much wasted potential and money that now is going to have this movie be in the hands, I assume, if it comes back, a cis white male creator. Beyond frustrating.
I believe so, yeah.
And any sort of actual potential oversight, I assume the Wachowskis have, will be limited because the studio will go, well, we gave you a chance. We gave you a bunch of money, and you kind of didn't really pull it off for us. So we're going to give this dude over here a chance to make it.
Yeah, that's the rub, right? Because she's listed as the executive producer, but as you and I both know, executive producer can mean someone who is genuinely the person who manages the production to make sure that everything's going a certain direction, or it can be purely a vanity credit, and we don't know which of that it is.
And as a marginalized creative, I can tell you explicitly, you get one chance. After that, regardless of what you do, people are going to say, well, remember that one time you fucked up? That's all they got.
Yep.
Consistently and repeatedly. I hear it every fucking day of my life when I'm trying to make stuff. So I am frustrated with this product because I saw what it could be, and I don't know why it's like this. And so that's one of the reasons I'll likely never watch this movie again. I have a lot of comments and thoughts that I've shared, and I've tried to be negative with them, and I've tried to balance them out. Out of all the movies we've seen, I think this is the most frustrated I've ever been at anything we've done to date.
Interesting. Okay.
And I don't even love the Matrix franchise. I think it's good. But I see the potential there, and I see a creative that got to tell their story and change their life changed in the course of it. And I'm beyond frustrated to know that like the next thing that comes out, if it comes out, they're going to be hampered in how they can influence it going forward.
Right. I mean, if anything, this movie is an explicit cautionary tale of the problems of extending franchises, of extending franchises, I should say. You should sometimes stories just come to an end, and frankly, The Matrix came to an end twice. It was fine at the end of the first movie. It was okay at the end of the third movie, and yet here it comes again, right? And so uh, I would even I mentioned it a few times. I would even make an argument that John Wick is going through this exact same problem right now. Um, the first movie I really enjoyed. The second and third movies are okay, and now we're getting the fourth movies and spin-off shows and the ballerina, and it's just like I get it. They're assassins, you know. Um, to your point, like weirdly, as much stick as it gets, Star Wars did it close to right. They squandered it, but they figured out that piece. So and relevant to this conversation, I was just seeing a comment today that the people working on Doomsday said they're trying very hard to make it a movie where you can start. They're calling it Phase Zero. It's the all of the past stuff is going to be ditched and they're going to start over, which is both alarming but also relevant because your movie continuity is now almost 20 years old, right? So it's like you have to start fresh at some point in time. So like I'm at a point where like almost hard reboots are preferable at this point. It's like if you're gonna tell the new story or if you're gonna tell a story again, just do that. Don't keep dragging it out, and this movie is very much a case of like no one thought this movie needed to exist except for people who wanted to make money off of it.
And I think even Lana Wachowski said that stories need to end.
Yeah.
The thing is, I've said up front that I understand the studio has the IP and the studio wants to make money. That's what studios do.
Right. But I mean, as much as I hate to say this, I would actually much prefer you just say, cool, Matrix is over, done. And we're going to do a streaming series about the Matrix starting over fresh and like take the story of the three movies, smooth it out, build on it, and we do stuff like, building into the politics of Zion and all the conflicting groups and make an actual like series out of that. Might be a better way to approach that. If you want to keep the IP fresh, you can do other stuff with it. Do comic books, do animated versions. Like there's other things you can do beyond just cranking out $190 million into a Wachowski-shaped hole and hoping to God you make money off of it.
So Eddie, if people want to know what we're doing next time, if they don't want to talk about this movie anymore, much like me, what can they expect?
I just realized it is me next time too. It's one of those ones where I'm doing back ones.
It's one of the rare times it happens.
Yeah, because you didn't want to talk about this movie. That's fair. We are going back to westerns. We're done talking about the Matrix. We could do the spinoffs and whatnot, but no, I think we're more than done talking about the Matrix now. So we're talking about Sukiyaki Western Django. That is, those two words are really all I know about the movie. So,
in case anyone's curious, that means we're in the last stretch of our Western kick. So after that Western bit, we're done with Westerns and we're moving on to a brand new thing.
Yeah, we are wrapping this up because we're jumping to 2007, which is funny because like unintentional, but like, we did kind of stop the Western run around the time the Matrix sort of aired, and then we're going back to the point where the third Matrix movie would have been over for a few years. Like weirdly, we're in time lockstep, but
it's not weird. It's like whoever made the schedule did that intentionally.
No, I'm gonna stick with weird. I'm gonna keep that going.
And so if anyone's curious, also the Western run is going to end in 2010. So if you're expecting me to talk about let's talk about movies after 2010, you're going to have to wait to our next Western run. And God knows when that'll be, because I made Eddie watch a lot of Westerns.
Which, again, because we've had these breaks, I appreciate it this time around. But like, I'm actually not been nearly as burned out as I was. Again, we keep going back to superheroes run, but that was just too much all at once. I think this is a nice way of structuring it. Even though people might get frustrated, we take a month off, talk about something else for a while. But I think it's helping us to kind of keep the momentum going. And weirdly, talking about the Matrix, I think will help with modern westerns because I think there's some interesting choreograph and imagery overlap between the Matrix movies and westerns. So I have that in my head when I'm talking about other movies.
If people want to come talk to you, and I mean you specifically, not me, about Matrix 4, the remix, where can they do that?
You can find me at Darker Hue Studios. Um, it's weird. I go by Chris online there, but just trust me, it's me you're talking to, not anybody else. No, I am at pugsteady.com. You can find me there. And although I do hang out in the Darker Hue Discord, and I'm sure Chris can just mute the thread for a couple days while we're talking about Matrix 4 if you don't want to talk about it.
If you're looking for me, you can catch me in the Discord, or I may or may not mute you if you talk about this movie. Otherwise, I'm on Blue Sky at dark_hue.
And with that, we will be back to Westerns, but not back to the US next week.